in our baseline algorithm, we used all the words to do sentiment analysis. But there's lots of information about which words have which kind of sentiment that we might want to make use of in addition. These are called sentiment lexicons. One sentiment lexicon is the General Enquirer. It's been around for quite a long time, since 1966. And I pointed you here at the home page and the list of categories for the General Enquirer, and you can see the spreadsheet that lists all the words. Let's go look at the General Enquirer. So here's the General Enquirer categories, and here, for example, you can see make this a little larger. Here you can see positive and negative lists of words. Let's go look at one of them. Let's look at the positive list. So here's some list of words: ability, abide, able, abound, absolve, and so on. So here's positive words from this sentiment list. So in addition to positive and negative, the General Enquirer also has lots of other lists of kinds of classes of words: strong versus weak, overstated versus understated, words about pleasure, cognitive orientation, all sorts of other words. So we can use it not just for the simple polarity questions that we're talking about right now, but more rich sentiment kind of questions. Luke, the Linguistic Inquiry and Word Count, is a database developed by James Pennybaker and his colleagues. And here we have lots of classes, 70 classes of words talking about negative emotion or positive emotion, words like bad or weird or hate, cognitive processes, all the pronouns, first person, second person pronouns, words having to do with negation like no or never, quantifiers, and so on. And Luke has a small charge, but has a large list of words that people often use for sentiment analysis. The mp4 Subjectivity Cues Lexicon by Wilson and Wiebe and their colleagues gives you, again, a list of polarity items, your positive words and negative words, and words in this lexicon are also annotated for intensity, for how strong or weak they are. Another polarity lexicon that's available on the web is Bing Liu's Opinion Lexicon, and I've pointed you at that. Again, another list of positive or negative words. Finally, we haven't talked about WordNet. We'll talk about WordNet later, but WordNet is an online thesaurus, and the entries in WordNet have also been labeled for their polarity. So, for example, the word estimable, may be computed or estimated, is labeled as neither positive or negative, but objective in the Senti WordNet. But the word estimable, meaning deserving of respect or high regard, that's a mostly positive, although sometimes not, sometimes objective word. So we can see that each word gets a label for how positive, negative, or objective it is. And again, you can go look at that here, and you have to fill out a form to download that. And we'll talk about WordNet itself a bit later. So each of these lexicons has different things in it, but they overlap in all talking about polarity. And Chris Potts ran a lovely correlation between these, looking at whether the polarity, if a word is in multiple lexicons, does it have the same polarity? And you can see that with the exception of Senti WordNet, which has a whole lot of different things going on in it, in general, if a word is in multiple lexicons, the disagreements between the lexicons are very small. So most of the time, for the Opinion Lexicon, the General Enquirer Lexicon, for Luke, for the mp4 in general, for all of these, you find pretty similar sentiments if you're just doing polarity. Obviously, if you're doing more complicated things, then they're going to start to differ. We might want to look at each of the words and talk about what the polarity is of words, the words that we get from these lexicons, if we're looking at a database like IMDb. And there's some nice research by Chris Potts looking at this. So he asked the question, how likely is each word to appear in each sentiment class? And let's look at IMDb, where there's 10 stars. So a word could, like bad, could appear in 1-star reviews with a certain count, 2-star reviews with a certain count, 3-star, and so on. Can we use that to understand what's the sentiment of that word bad, just by counting how often it occurs in different reviews of different stars. And as he pointed out, you can't just use raw counts. Here, this shows you along the x-axis, we look at the different categories, so 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 10 star. And here's the count of times that the word bad occurs, the adjective bad occurs. And you can see it's mostly in 1-star reviews, but it actually occurs more often in 10-star reviews than in 2-star reviews, which seems like a problem because bad should be really a negative word. But that's because there are just a lot more 9 and 10-star reviews or 8 and 10-star reviews than there are 2-star reviews. It turns out that reviews tend to skew positive. So we can't use the raw counts. Instead, we're going to use the likelihood. We're going to take the frequency of the word in the class and we're going to divide it by the total number of words in that class. And that will solve the problem of classes like 9 and 10 in general being bigger, because we're computing the likelihood conditioned on the class size. Now, an additional thing we often want to do is compare these numbers for different words. Some words are very frequent, some words are less frequent, and so to do this, we want to do a scaled likelihood where we take the likelihood of the word given the class and just divide by the probability of the word. So now if a word is particularly frequent or particularly rare, we can still compare them with each other. So we'll compute these scaled likelihoods. And if we look at that, we can see here's the word good or the word amazing. We can see that as for amazing, as review numbers, as the stars go up from 1 star to 10 stars, the word is much more frequently used as we get higher up. For great, similarly, well, not as strong as amazing. For awesome, again, we see a very sharp rise in its use in 10-star reviews. For good, it turns out to be used mostly in the middle. A good movie is not great and it's not terrible, and that's what we might expect from the word good. And similarly for bad reviews, so again, a word like depressed more often going to occur in these negative reviews, the 1, 2, and 3 reviews. A word like bad, again, occurring in these 1, 2, and 3-star reviews. Terrible in these 1, 2, and 3-star reviews. So we can look at the review along the x-axis, the review quality 1 through 10, and along the y-axis, this scaled likelihood to see the polarity of the word. So Potts also asked whether we could see sentiment in other words than good or bad. He looked at logical negation, words like no, not, never, and the NT of isn't and didn't and so on. Are those associated with negative sentiment? Now what he did again is he counted negation in online reviews and looked at them, how they match the review rating. And just like the word bad or the word terrible, you can see that the word, these negation words like no, not, never, occur more frequently in these low star reviews, either in the IMD database or other databases, which are only from 1 to 5 stars. So in these lexicons, we can see lots of words are positive and negative, but there might be more sophisticated features like, let's say, this kind of logical negation also is a good cue for sentiment.